Fairy rings. Fairy rings are circular patches of grass that are darker or greener than the surrounding area, often accompanied by the emergence of mushrooms. They expand outward at a rate of 6 to 24 inches per year. Depending on the type of grass or soil and the weather. But fungi flourish and thrive under negative geopathic stress conditions. As such, fairy rings of mushrooms can be indicators of a zone of geopathic stress. Geopathic stress. The word geopathic is derived from the Greek words geo, meaning the earth, and pathos, meaning disease or suffering, so literally suffering of the earth. The term geopathic stress is used to describe negative energies which emanate from the earth and cause discomfort and ill health to those living on it. The surface of the earth is woven with a pattern of etheric threads, identical in energy and importance to the acupuncture meridians of the human body. We saw this in the video, the concept of the template and Indra's net. These are responsible for the health and growth of the natural kingdoms of the landscape. And any interruption to their strength and harmonious flow has subtle but profound effects upon the health of the local natural life. The horror of Chinese geomancers at British attempts to construct railways across the Lung Mai or dragon veins of their country resulted in a consortium of local businessmen buying and promptly dismantling the newly completed railway line around Shanghai, in horror at the devastating impact it would have on the feng shui of the city. And now, as cities sink in the Far East, including Shanghai, unwise building of cities is being blamed on climate change, rising sea levels, not sinking cities. The healthy earth frequency. As the earth rotates on its axis, it functions as an electromagnet, generating electrical currents in the molten metals found within its core, and an electromagnetic field on the surface which oscillates at an average frequency of 7.83 Hz, which is almost identical to the range of alpha human brainwaves. Life on Earth has evolved with this background magnetic field, and creatures are accustomed to living within its presence. The Irish professor George Francis Fitzgerald discovered their existence in 1893, but the physicist Winfried Otto Schumann, along with H. L. Koenig, attempted to measure the frequency in 1952, and because he publicized his findings in America, the rediscovery was called Schumann waves. The space agency NASA has had to build Schumann resonators into their space shuttles in order to artificially generate this electromagnetic frequency, thereby safeguarding the health of astronauts when they are beyond the influence of the Earth's vital frequency. Geopathic stress is thus a distortion of this natural frequency and any distortion of this 7.83 Hz level creates a stress with the potential to weaken the immune system of any mammal living above the distortion, leading to greater susceptibility to viruses, bacteria, parasites, environmental pollution, degenerative disease, and a wide range of health problems. What can cause areas of geopathic stress? Streams of water flowing underground, geological fault lines, underground caverns, and certain mineral deposits, notably coal, oil, and iron. Man-made disturbances to the Earth's surface, quarries and mines, road and rail cuttings and embankments. Building foundations, especially tall buildings with steel pilings. Tunnels, sewers, drains, buried utility pipes and wires, pylons, electricity generating stations and substations, and communication masts, including internet and mobile phone masts. Even today's windmills are actually metal spikes plunged into the ground. Fairy rings only grow where the lines have become misdirected and interfered with in a major way. What sort of illnesses can result? Sleep disturbances, asthma and respiratory difficulties, fatigue and lethargy, unexplained mood changes, aggression and depression, neurasthenia, arthritis, diabetes mellitus, cancers, multiple sclerosis, myopathies and neuropathies, hypertension, cardiac problems, strokes, migraines, epileptic form fits, gastritis, mania and schizophrenia, bedwetting, allergies, eczema, failure to thrive, attention deficit disorder, hyperactivity, learning difficulties. And this list could continue. In essence, we are running our bodies at the wrong frequency. What will a diviner do? If you build your house over these black points, a negative energy may well build up in your house, which can lead to all kinds of problems for the people who live there, including illness. A diviner and earth healer will, when called out to a house, bring along a divining rod and determine the problem areas. He will then neutralize them by earthing the spot in a manner similar to the principle used in acupuncture, by puncturing it with steel bars. The bar breaks the flow at the point of insertion. This diverts the negative energy downwards away from the house. John Mitchell, The View over Atlantis. Those who are now engaged in rediscovering the secrets of natural healing have noticed a connection between the incidence of such diseases as cancer and the location of houses placed above lines of earth current which have become sour, known as black streams. It has been found possible to purify these streams by driving metal stakes into the earth above their course. Fairy rings and folklore. The association of fairy rings with black streams has resulted in them becoming the subject of much folklore and myth worldwide, particularly in Western Europe. They are often seen as hazardous or dangerous places and linked with witches or the devil in folklore. British folklorist Thomas Keatley, author of the World Guide to Gnomes, Fairies, Elves and Other Little People, noted that in Scandinavia in the early 19th century, beliefs persisted that fairy rings, elf dance, arose from the dancing of elves. Keatley warned that while entering an elf dance might allow the interloper to see the elves, it would also put the intruder in thrall to their illusions. Given that a black stream is altering the frequency you are running on, it would not be too far-fetched to believe that it may well cause out-of-body experiences, visions and hallucinations. Richard Cratemore, Geopathic Stress and Extract. Associated also with such areas are increased occult phenomena. The relationship between haunted houses and ley line crossings is well known. Astral projection is easier and stronger along the paths of ley lines. Poltergeist phenomena and other materializations with the charging feel so. Any geomagnetic disturbance is mirrored on every plane. And if you are foolish enough to eat any of the mushrooms in the fairy ring, and most if not all will be poisonous and survive, all sorts of visions and hallucinations may follow of other worlds and a total loss of the current reality. So no sense of time or of their former existence in this realm. Fairy circles feature in works by William Shakespeare, who alludes to them in A Midsummer Night's Dream, and The Tempest, Act 5, Scene 1. You demi-puppets, that by moonshine do the green sour ringlets make, whereof the ooh not bites. And you whose pastime is to make midnight mushrooms, that rejoice to hear the solemn curfew. And we also have William Butler Yeats, The Land of Heart's Desire. You shall go with me, newly married bride, and gaze upon a merrier multitude, white-armed Nuala, Angus of the birds, Fiacre of the hurtling foam, and him who is the ruler of the western host, Vinara, and their land of heart's desire, where beauty has no ebb, decay no flood, but joy is wisdom, time an endless song. I kiss you, and the world begins to fade. Joe Cassidy, The Diviner. We will end this video with an extract from Joe Cassidy's book, The Diviner. The story demonstrates all too well the punishment meted out to those who disobey fairy law. Eddie Mooney made his living by driving machinery. He was getting plenty of work, so he borrowed money to buy new machinery. He was doing work for a property developer, and for the first few weeks he was paid regularly and there was no problem. Then one day he was asked to dig up a piece of land. When the developer pointed the land out to him, Eddie noticed that it had a fairy ring on it. He mentioned this, and the man made it clear that this wasn't a request, it was an order. If Eddie refused to do the job, he would not get his final payment, which included money he had already earned. Now Eddie was a countryman. He knew that such sacred land should never be tampered with. He knew that if he did so, he would be inviting bad luck. but he needed the money. Nevertheless, he said, "I can't touch that land. I won't, under no circumstances." The property developer went red with anger. "It's up to you. If you don't do it, you won't get paid. End of story." And he walked off. Eddie walked round, deep in thought. He wondered how he would go home and tell his wife there was no money. How would he explain it to the hire purchase company? "I was put in this terrible position," he told me. "I drove my machine to the fairy ring and dug the bucket down into the earth. Then I had second thoughts. I decided to think it over during the night, so I left the site. That's all I remember." "Why? What happened?" "Well, I was still thinking about my dilemma as I was driving home. I thought, I'm in a fair predicament here, and the next thing I remember, I woke up in hospital." "In hospital? Whatever happened?" "I ended up in a ditch. I don't know how. I don't remember. I was found at 9 that night by a passerby. Eddie was badly injured and spent a long time in hospital, so there was no money coming in anyway. When I eventually came out of hospital, I went down to collect my machine. I knocked on the property developer's front door, and he answered. He'd obviously been made aware I'd had an accident. When I told him that I was there to collect my machine, he said, "I've bad news for you." "What do you mean?" I asked him. And what did he mean? Well, he told me that the evening I'd left there, the evening I'd had that crash, I'd not been long gone when he smelt smoke. He looked out of the window of the house and saw that my machine was on fire. "I don't believe it. Hadn't you enough bad luck already?" Hadn't I? The machine was destroyed, and there was no reason for it that I could see. It hadn't been doused with petrol, and it hadn't ever given any trouble before. I'm just glad I went with my gut feeling and didn't do any further digging that day.